Welcome to our deep dive into the hidden side of everything.
The hidden side of everything.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're going to be using the revised and expanded edition of the book Freakonomics by Steven D. Levitt and Stephen J. Dubner as our guide today.
Oh, cool. Yeah, it's a book that uses the lens of economics to look at everyday things.
Yeah.
In a totally new way.
Totally.
Yeah, and it's going to challenge a lot of the assumptions you probably have about the world.
I think so, for sure.
Yeah.
Now, I know what you might be thinking. Economics.
Right.
Isn't that all about money and markets?
Yeah.
But that's just the surface.
Right.
Freakonomics digs deeper, revealing the hidden forces that drive human behavior.
Yeah, and at its core, it's about understanding incentives.
Okay.
Okay, so think of incentives as the carrots and sticks
Yeah.
that motivate our choices.
Okay.
They can be economic, like a bonus at work,
Yeah.
or social, like the desire to fit in.
Okay, so incentives are everywhere. But how does that help us understand the world in a new way?
Well, sometimes the most well-intentioned incentives can have unintended consequences.
Oh.
You know, like that daycare center that started charging a late fee to discourage parents from picking up their kids late.
Didn't that actually backfire?
It did, yeah. Instead of reducing late pickups, it actually increased them.
Oh.
Parents saw the fee as a price they could pay for the convenience of being late instead of a penalty.
A penalty, right?
Yeah, it completely shifted their perception of the situation.
So it's like a real-life example of how like a small tweak can create a ripple effect and change everything.
Totally.
We need to be really mindful of the incentives we create because they can really have a powerful impact on behavior.
Absolutely. And that leads us to another fascinating aspect of Freakonomics, which is the exploration of cheating.
Now, when you say cheating, most people probably think about students sneaking answers on a test. Exactly, yeah.
But Freakonomics looks at it on a much broader scale, right?
They do a much broader scale, yeah. They look at how incentives can drive cheating in all sorts of situations.
Wow.
From classrooms to sumo wrestling rings.
Wait, sumo wrestling?
Yeah.
That's a sport built on honor and tradition.
Right.
How could there be cheating in sumo wrestling?
Yeah, that's what makes it so surprising.
Yeah.
You know, Levitt looked at the data and discovered patterns.
Yeah.
That suggested some sumo wrestlers were intentionally throwing matches.
Okay, but why would a sumo wrestler ever throw a match?
Yeah, great question. The answer lies in the incentives.
Okay.
You know, a wrestler might throw a match to repay a favor to another wrestler, to help someone move up in the rankings.
Wow.
Or even to avoid a potentially career-ending injury.
It makes you realize that even in seemingly straightforward situations, there are often hidden motivations at play.
Right.
Shaped by the incentives of the system.
It's a theme that runs throughout Freakonomics.
Totally. And speaking of hidden motivations, let's move on to the concept of information asymmetry.
Information asymmetry.
Yeah.
Right.
This is where one party in a transaction has more information than the other, giving them a distinct advantage.
Okay.
It's like having an ace up your sleeve.
So it's like when you're buying a used car.
Exactly.
And the seller knows all about his problems, but you don't.
Exactly. Yeah. Or think about real estate agents.
Oh, yeah.
They have access to information about both the buyer and the seller, giving them an edge in negotiations.
Right. And sometimes this control of information can be used for more nefarious purposes. Freakonomics tells the story of Stetson Kennedy, who infiltrated the Ku Klux Klan in the 1940s.
Oh, wow.
His goal wasn't to join their cause, but to expose their secrets.
Yeah.
He shared their rituals and code words with radio shows and newspapers, essentially stripping away the mystery and intimidation that gave them power.
Yeah, that's using information as a weapon?
So in a way, he used information as a weapon to fight against injustice.
Yeah.
It's a powerful example of how knowledge can be a force for good.
It also shows that information is a valuable commodity, and those who control it often hold a position of power.
Right.
This is something to keep in mind in our increasingly information-driven world.
Okay.
Now let's shift gears a bit and delve into a topic that's close to home for many of us.
Okay.
Parenting.
Parenting.
Yeah.
That high-stakes game where everyone seems to have an opinion.
Right.
And you're constantly second-guessing yourself.
Exactly. And Freakonomics asks a provocative question.
Okay.
How much do parents really matter in shaping their children's lives?
It's the age-old nature versus nurture debate.
Yeah.
How much is predetermined by genetics?
Right.
And how much is influenced by upbringing? It's a question that has puzzled parents and experts for centuries.
Oh, for centuries.
What insights did Freakonomics uncover?
Yeah, so Levitt analyzed a huge data set called the Early Childhood Longitudinal Study, or ECLS for short.
Okay.
This study tracked thousands of children over time.
Wow.
Collecting data on their development and their family background.
So he was looking for correlations
Yes.
between specific parenting practices
Yes.
and how children turned out right.
Exactly.
Like, does reading to your kids every night really make a difference?
Yeah, exactly. And what he found was that some things we might assume are crucial, like frequent museum visits, actually showed little correlation with early test scores.
Seriously?
Yeah.
All those trips to the museum and my kids aren't little geniuses.
Oh. Well, enriching experiences are certainly valuable in their own right.
Okay.
But what Levitt discovered was that other factors had a much stronger link to early academic performance.
Okay, so what were those factors?
Yeah.
What really moves the needle when it comes to a child's early development?
Yeah. Things like having highly educated parents and socioeconomic status played a significant role.
Interesting.
It suggests that a child's overall environment and the resources available to them have a larger impact than specific parenting techniques.
So maybe it's not about drilling flashcards or signing your kids up for every enrichment activity under the sun.
Right.
Maybe it's more about creating a stimulating and supportive environment where they can thrive.
Right. That's one of the key takeaways. It challenges us to think about the bigger picture of a child's development and to consider the systemic factors that influence their opportunities.
It's a reminder that parenting, like everything else,
Yeah.
is more complex than it seems on the surface.
And speaking of complexity, Freakonomics delves into the intriguing world of names and the hidden messages they convey.
We briefly touched on this earlier.
We did.
The story of the brothers named Winner and Loser.
Yeah.
But wouldn't you say that a name can influence how others perceive a person?
Right.
Which could then impact their opportunities.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
And it's something Freakonomics explores in detail.
Okay.
They analyzed a massive data set of California birth certificates.
Wow.
And found fascinating patterns
Okay.
in how names differ across racial and socioeconomic groups.
So you're saying that a name can be a kind of social marker?
It seems that way.
Wow.
Even before a child is born.
Yeah.
Parents often unconsciously choose names that signal their social class.
Wow.
And cultural background.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
So a name isn't just a label.
Right.
It's a window into a person's social standing.
Uh-huh.
And potential opportunities.
Exactly.
What other insights did Freakonomics glean from this data?
Well, they found that resumes with Black-sounding names received fewer callbacks from potential employers, suggesting a potential economic penalty.
It's a stark reminder that our unconscious biases can have real-world consequences.
Yeah.
Even when it comes to something as seemingly simple as a name.
It challenges us to be more aware of our assumptions and to strive for fairness in our interactions with others.
Okay.
Now, we've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive.
We have.
But we've only just scratched the surface of Freakonomics.
I'm eager to hear more.
Great.
What other surprising insights are waiting for us in the next part of our exploration?
Yeah, in the next part, we'll delve into even more thought-provoking topics, including the unexpected connection between the legalization of abortion and the drop in crime rates in the 1990s.
That's a topic I'm definitely curious to explore further.
Yeah.
It seems like Freakonomics has a knack for turning conventional wisdom on its head.
Uh-huh.
I can't wait to see what other surprises are in store.
Yeah, me too.
Me too.
I think you'll enjoy it.
I think so too. Welcome back to our deep dive into Freakonomics.
The hidden side of everything.
We've been exploring some pretty thought-provoking ideas so far, like how seemingly simple things, like incentives and information, can have huge ripple effects on our lives.
Yeah, absolutely.
And as promised, we're going to tackle one of the most controversial and surprising claims from the book in this segment. The link between the legalization of abortion and the drop in crime rates in the 1990s.
All right.
Now, I know this is a sensitive topic, but Freakonomics isn't afraid to ask tough questions and challenge conventional wisdom. So let's dive in and try to understand the argument they're making.
Okay.
Back in the 1990s, crime rates in the U.S. plummeted.
Yeah.
And everyone's trying to figure out, why was it the strong economy?
Could be.
New policing strategies, stricter gun control laws.
Yeah, those were the popular theories at the time.
Right.
But Freakonomics suggests a more unexpected factor.
Okay.
The legalization of abortion in the U.S. following the Roe v. Wade Supreme Court decision in 1973.
That's a pretty bold claim.
It is, yeah.
How do they connect those two seemingly unrelated things?
Well, Levitt and Dubner looked at the data.
Okay.
And found a strong correlation between the legalization of abortion and the subsequent decline in crime rates, which started about 2 decades later.
That timing is significant, right?
Right.
Because it's around the time when children born after Roe v. Wade would have been entering their late teens and early 20s.
Right.
Which is typically the age range most associated with criminal activity.
Exactly. Their argument is that by reducing the number of children born into disadvantaged circumstances, particularly those who might have been unwanted or lacked resources, the legalization of abortion may have inadvertently reduced the pool of potential criminals.
So it wasn't about changing the behavior of existing criminals, but rather shifting the demographics of the population over time.
Precisely. It's a complex issue with many contributing factors.
Right.
But the data does show a compelling correlation.
Yeah.
It's important to remember that correlation doesn't equal causation.
Right.
So it's not a definitive answer, but it's certainly a provocative theory
for sure
that challenges us to think about the unintended consequences of social policies.
It definitely makes you realize that sometimes the most impactful changes happen in ways we least expect.
I agree.
And speaking of unintended consequences, let's shift our focus to the world of parenting.
Okay.
We've already talked about how much or how little parents might matter when it comes to their kids' academic performance.
Right.
But Freakonomics dives into another fascinating aspect of parenting, the role of fear.
Oh, yeah. Fear. Big one.
Fear is a powerful motivator, especially for parents.
Oh, absolutely.
We're constantly bombarded with messages about all the dangers lurking out there, ready to harm our children.
All the time, yeah.
It feels like every time I turn on the news or scroll through social media, there's a new thing I'm supposed to be terrified of.
Right.
It can be overwhelming.
Freakonomics introduces us to an expert named Peter Sandman.
Okay.
Who distinguishes between the risks that scare people and the risks that actually kill people. It's not always the same things.
So it's like how we're more afraid of flying than driving.
Exactly.
Even though statistically driving is much more dangerous.
Yeah. Sandman argues that our perception of risk is influenced by factors like control and dread. We tend to fear things that feel out of our control and evoke a sense of dread, even if they're statistically unlikely.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
The thought of a plane crash is terrifying.
Right.
Even if it's a rare occurrence.
Right.
But a car accident, while it's statistically more likely, feels somehow less dreadful because we have a sense of control behind the wheel.
Right. And as parents, we're particularly susceptible to this kind of fear-mongering.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to our children's safety.
It's like we're wired to be hyper-vigilant about anything that could potentially harm our kids.
Totally. Freakonomics points out that this fear-driven approach to parenting can sometimes lead to a focus on precautions that, while well-intentioned, may not be the most effective in actually preventing harm.
It's like the obsession with car seats.
Yeah.
Of course they're important.
Right.
But sometimes it feels like the fear surrounding them overshadows other statistically more significant risks, like drowning.
Yeah, it's not to say that car seats aren't valuable.
Right.
But the level of fear surrounding them might be out of proportion to their actual impact on child safety.
Yeah.
And all this anxiety and stress doesn't necessarily translate into safer kids.
Right.
It's about finding a balance.
So it's not about ignoring potential dangers,
right,
but about putting them into perspective.
Exactly.
And making informed decisions based on evidence and logic.
Yes.
Rather than just our gut reactions.
Exactly. It's about being thoughtful and discerning about the information we consume and the choices we make as parents.
Okay.
Now, before we move on to the final part of our deep dive,
all right,
let's touch upon another intriguing aspect of Freakonomics.
All ears. What else have you got up your sleeve?
Well, we've talked about information asymmetry in the context of experts and professionals.
Right.
But Freakonomics argues that it plays out in our everyday lives as well.
You mean like how we present ourselves on social media?
Exactly.
We carefully curate the information we share
to
create a certain image.
Right.
It's like we're all playing a game of information manipulation to some extent.
That's a great example. We tailor the information we share depending on our audience and our goals. We emphasize certain qualities and downplay others to make a desired impression.
It's like how we might describe ourselves differently on a first date versus a job interview.
Exactly.
It's all about strategically presenting the information that best serves our interests.
Exactly. And it makes you wonder how much of what we perceive as reality is actually shaped by the information that's presented to us or even withheld from us.
It's like we're all living in our own little information bubbles.
Shaped
by our own biases and the information we choose to consume.
I agree.
It makes you realize the importance of seeking out diverse perspectives and challenging your own assumptions.
Absolutely. We need to be critical consumers of information. Both online and offline.
For sure.
Now, are you ready for the final leg of our Freakonomics journey?
Bring it on. What other surprises does Freakonomics have in store for us?
In our final segment, we'll explore one last fascinating insight from Freakonomics.
Okay.
The idea that something as seemingly simple as your name can have a profound impact on your life's trajectory.
This should be interesting. I'm ready to have my mind blown one last time.
Oh.
Welcome back, Deep Divers. We've covered some serious ground in our exploration of Freakonomics.
We have.
But there's still one last fascinating topic to dive into.
Yeah, one more.
The power of names. Though we've already touched on this a little bit.
We have.
With the story of winner and loser lane.
All right.
And how our assumptions about names can be totally off.
Totally, yeah.
But Freakonomics takes this idea even further.
They do. They dug into a huge data set of California birth certificates and found some really interesting patterns. What they discovered is that parents often unconsciously choose names that signal their social class and cultural background.
So it's like a name isn't just a label.
Right.
But it's actually sending a message about your family background and social standing.
It is. It really is.
That's pretty profound.
Yeah, it has real-world consequences, too.
Okay.
Freakonomics cites studies that show resumes with Black-sounding names are less likely to get callbacks from potential employers.
Wow.
So even though we might think we're judging people solely on their qualifications, a name can trigger unconscious biases that affect our decisions.
It's a sobering reminder that even something as seemingly simple as a name can perpetuate inequality.
Absolutely.
It makes you wonder how much of our success or failure is determined by factors that are completely outside of our control.
That's a big question, and one that Freakonomics doesn't necessarily answer.
Of course.
But it certainly prompts us to be more aware of our own biases and to strive for fairness in our interactions with others.
It's like that saying, walk a mile in someone else's shoes.
Right.
We need to understand the hidden forces that shape people's lives, the things that we might not even be aware of before we can truly judge them.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
Freakonomics is all about challenging our assumptions, looking beyond the surface, and understanding the often hidden factors that influence the world around us.
It's been a wild ride.
It has.
We've explored everything from cheating teachers and sumo wrestlers to the impact of abortion on crime rates and the power of names.
We have.
Who knew economics could be so interesting?
It's not your typical economics class, that's for sure.
Totally.
Freakonomics reminds us that the world is full of surprises. Yeah. And that by asking the right questions, we can unlock some truly fascinating insights into the forces that shape our lives.
So to our listeners, as you go about your day, remember to think like a Freakonomist.
Good advice.
Look beyond the surface. Question your assumptions and never be afraid to ask why.
Yeah.
You never know what hidden truths you might uncover.
And that wraps up our deep dive into Freakonomics.
It does.
We hope you enjoyed exploring the hidden side of everything.
Thanks for joining us.